New York City, 1978, was bustling with activity. Skyscrapers glowed against the orange evening sky, while on the streets, men in suits and women in heels mingled in the chaotic rhythm of the city that never slept. On top of one of those buildings, in a room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a large Langford Industries logo, Victoria Langford closed a folder and sighed. He did it again. Across the desk, her personal assistant, Margaret Maggie Turner, looked up from her notebook. Daniel. Carter? Victoria nodded. He left exactly at 5 o'clock, not a minute later. Maggie shrugged. Maybe he just likes to be on time. Nobody works on time in this company, Victoria countered. Maggie smirked. Except him. And that was the problem. The man who needed no one. Daniel Carter was no ordinary employee. He had arrived at Langford Industries 2 years ago and had quickly become one of the company's most brilliant engineers. Quiet, focused, extremely efficient, and yet aloof, unapproachable. He refused lunches with colleagues, avoided corporate events, and never accepted overtime. What's he hiding? Victoria murmured. Maggie frowned. Do you really want to? No? Victoria was silent for a moment. Then she grabbed her coat and decided to find out for herself. That night would change everything. Night fell over New York, and Victoria Langford was not used to waiting. Sitting inside her black Cadillac, parked discreetly a block away from Langford Industries, she drummed her fingers on the steering wheel impatiently. Then at exactly 5 p.m., the door to the building opened. Daniel Carter walked out as if it were just another ordinary day. He was dressed simply, a leather briefcase under his arm. His posture was erect. Without greeting anyone, without hesitation, he walked down the sidewalk as if he had a very clear destination. Victoria started the car and began to follow him, the unexpected route. She expected him to go home, maybe to a bar, maybe a secret rendezvous. But as the minutes passed, the route became strange. Daniel was not going to an upscale neighborhood. Quite the opposite. Victoria's luxury Cadillac drove from brightly lit streets to darker areas, worn by time and inequality. Harlem. Victoria frowned. What are you doing here, Carter? The revelation Daniel entered a small red brick building with a worn sign on the door. Hope Community Center. Victoria parked across the street and stared. Yellow lights illuminated the interior of the building. Through the glass window, she saw children gathered at tables, notebooks open. And then, there he was. Daniel Carter, Langford Industries' most reserved employee, teaching math to a group of underprivileged children. Victoria felt the impact. This didn't make sense, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't know what to think. Victoria Langford didn't know what she expected to find when she followed Daniel Carter that night. But this was definitely not it. From inside the car, she peered out the window of the community center. Daniel was no ordinary visitor. He walked among the children with ease, helping them with math equations, teaching them how to fix small engines, and adjusting tools on a makeshift workbench. He belonged here. And for the first time, Victoria realized that she knew nothing about the employee himself. Beyond the office curious, Victoria got out of the car and crossed the street. Through the half-open door, she could hear the children's laughter and Daniel's calm voice. Okay, can someone tell me what 173 divided by 7 is? A girl of about 10 frowned. That's broken, Daniel smiled. Exactly, but you can round it up. Victoria had never seen him smile like that in the office. There, he didn't seem like a cold and distant man. He seemed complete. The doubt. She walked away before anyone saw her and went back to the car. What did all this mean? Daniel didn't accept. Over time, he didn't participate in company events. He didn't seem interested in moving up at Langford Industries, because his job was just a tool to support it. That changed everything. And now, Victoria needed to know more. The next morning, Victoria Langford couldn't get Daniel Carter out of her head. What was he doing at that community center? Why was he hiding it? She hated secrets. And now, she needed answers. Face to face, at 8 a.m. Sharp, Daniel walked into the office as usual, calm, focused, as if nothing had happened. Victoria waited until late morning, then walked into his office without knocking. Daniel looked up, surprised. "Ms. Langford," she crossed her arms. "Where were you last night?" His face changed subtly, but it wasn't fear or guilt. It was the look of someone who knew he'd been found out. "Did you follow me?" he asked calmly. "I needed to figure out why my best employee was avoiding work, as if he was hiding something." Daniel closed the folder on his desk and sighed. "If you wanted answers, you could have asked." Victoria narrowed her eyes. "Then tell me." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he said something she never expected to hear. "I grew up in that neighborhood." Victoria frowned. "What?" "My mother worked 3 jobs to put me through school, but it was that community center that gave me a future." He took a deep breath. "Now I give back what I received." Victoria didn't know what to say, because for the first time, she realized that maybe she was wrong about him. Victoria Langford didn't know what to say. Daniel Carter, her most reserved employee, wasn't just a talented engineer. He was a man shaped by necessity, by struggle, and by something she never imagined. "Did you grow up in that neighborhood?" she repeated, still processing. Daniel nodded, keeping his posture firm. "My mother was a cleaning lady. She worked day and night. My father, well, he was never around. If it weren't for that community center, I wouldn't have made it this far." Victoria felt a strange unease. She had always believed that hard work led to success. But Daniel, he worked hard and still had to fight against everything and everyone. "And why do you hide it?" she asked, crossing her arms. Daniel sighed. "Because I know how this world works, Mrs. Langford. If people find out that an engineer from Langford Industries spends his nights teaching children in a shelter, they think he's not dedicated enough." He held her gaze. "Or they think he doesn't belong here." Victoria felt the impact, because deep down, she knew he was right. What to do with the truth? She stared at him, taking in every detail. He wasn't apologizing. He didn't seem embarrassed. He was simply telling the truth. And now Victoria had to decide what to do with this information. Victoria Langford didn't like to waste time on doubts. But that morning, sitting in her luxurious living room overlooking New York City, she couldn't stop thinking about Daniel Carter. She had always believed that hard work and ambition were the only paths to success. But Daniel worked hard, and yet he saw success differently. A look. Back, Victoria opened her desk drawer and pulled out an old photo. She, at 10 years old, sitting in an office next to her father, the founder of Langford Industries. "The world doesn't respect the weak, Victoria." She had grown up hearing that. She had learned that success was about not showing vulnerability. And now, a man who had grown up with nothing, who was supposed to be the example of everything she despised, was showing her that maybe her father was wrong. A new perspective. Maggie Turner walked into the room without knocking, holding a folder. "I need you to approve these contracts. Are you okay?" Victoria blinked. "Yes." Maggie crossed her arms. "Since when do you get distracted in the middle of the workday?" Victoria took a deep breath. If someone is talented but chooses to spend their time on something other than work, can they still be considered a dedicated professional? Maggie frowned. "This is about Carter, isn't it?" Victoria didn't answer, but Maggie smirked. "Maybe the right question isn't whether he's dedicated. Maybe it's whether you're willing to see beyond what you've always believed." Victoria felt the impact of those words, and she knew she had to make a decision. Victoria Langford was not a woman of half-hearted decisions. She did not hesitate. She did not overthink. But now, she could not ignore the internal conflict that was growing inside her. The instinct for control. That afternoon, Victoria watched Daniel from her glass office. He worked as efficiently as ever, organized, focused, as if nothing had changed since their conversation. But everything had changed. She knew his secret, and a part of her wanted to do something. If he had more free time, he could do even more for the community center. Maybe a promotion, a raise. She hated to admit it, but she felt a strange need to help him, not out of pity, but because he was the first person who had ever made her concept of success tremble. But was that the right thing to do? The unexpected advice. Maggie Turner appeared in the doorway with a cup of coffee. "You're..." Looking at Carter again, Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Don't be ridiculous," Maggie smirked. "If I know you, you're already thinking of a way to solve this." Victoria twirled the pen between her fingers. "The problem is, what if he doesn't want my help?" Maggie raised her eyebrows. "Since when does Victoria Langford care about what other people want?" Silence. Victoria let out a long sigh. "Since Daniel Carter made me see something I never wanted to see." The next step. Victoria picked up the phone and dialed HR. "I need to know as much information as possible about Daniel Carter. History. Performance, anything." Maggie raised her eyebrows. "Are you going to interfere?" Victoria didn't answer, but Maggie saw the answer in her eyes, and knew that Daniel Carter was about to get a surprise that would change everything. Daniel Carter didn't like surprises, so when he received an email asking him to meet privately with Victoria Langford, his first reaction was to frown. This wasn't normal. He took a deep breath and walked into her office. Victoria was sitting behind her massive mahogany desk, looking at him as if she had already made up her mind. "Carter, have a seat." He did as she was told, but his expression remained closed. "I've done some research on you," she continued, matter-of-factly. "I know you grew up in Harlem, that you studied engineering on a full scholarship, and that you've turned down several promotions because you don't want to commit to more hours." Daniel remained silent. "I also know that all of your salary goes to running that community center." His eyes narrowed. "Is this some kind of interrogation?" Victoria leaned forward. "It's an offer." Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Offer?" She smiled slightly. "I want to give you a higher position in the company, better pay, flexible hours. That way you can continue your work at the community center without having to divide your attention so much." Daniel stood still for a few seconds. Then he laughed. Low, short, almost ironic. "Do you really think you can buy my loyalty?" Victoria narrowed her eyes. "This isn't about loyalty, Carter, it's about impact. If you have more resources, you can help those kids even more." Daniel crossed his arms. "Or maybe this is just your way of easing your conscience." Silence. Victoria felt the blow, because deep down, he wasn't completely wrong, but she wasn't going to give up that easily. "Think about it, Carter," she said, leaning back in her chair. "You may hate me, but denying this opportunity just out of pride doesn't help anyone." She slid a contract across the table. Daniel looked at the paper, and in that moment he knew that this decision would change his life forever. Daniel Carter didn't take the contract. He just stared at Victoria Langford, weighing every word she had said. "You really think money can solve everything, don't you?" Victoria stood her ground. "I think money can make change happen, and you need it to continue your work." Daniel let out a short laugh. "You don't understand." She narrowed her eyes. "Then make me understand." Daniel's truth. Daniel leaned forward. "I've spent my whole life watching people like you throw money at problems to try to fix them. But some things can't be bought." He pointed to the contract. "You want to promote me because you feel guilty, because my story bothers you. But what I do at that community center isn't a burden. It's the most important part of my life." Victoria felt a strange uneasiness in her chest, because in a way he was right. The turning point, she took a deep breath. "I don't want to change what you do. I want to give you an opportunity to do even more." Daniel was silent for a moment. Then, he took the contract. "I'll accept on one condition." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" He slid the paper back to her. "If this company really cares about impact, then you won't give me a bigger role. You'll invest in the community center." Victoria held her breath, because for the first time, someone was challenging her to change something real, and now she had to decide if she was willing to take that step. Victoria Langford wasn't the kind of person to let anyone dictate her decisions. But as she looked at Daniel Carter, holding that contract and waiting for her response, she realized he wasn't like the others. He didn't want more money. He didn't want status. He wanted real change. And for the first time, she wondered if she'd been wrong all along about what really mattered. The decision Victoria took the contract back. She tore out the last page. Daniel frowned. "What are you doing?" She pushed a new piece of paper toward him. "A new proposal. I'm not just going to give you a better salary. I'm going to fund the expansion of the community center." Daniel stood still. Victoria crossed her arms. "You said some things can't be bought, and I agree. But giving people the right tools can change everything." Daniel picked up the new contract. "Are you sure about this?" Victoria smiled for the first time. "For the first time in my life, yes. The new beginning." 2 weeks later, the Hope Community Center received its largest investment since its founding. New classrooms, new equipment, more teachers to help more children. And in the midst of it all, Daniel Carter knew he had made the right choice. Because he had not only changed his life, he had changed Victoria Langford's view of the world. And that was true wealth. The end.